It was a bright autumn morning at Arlington National Cemetery. The air felt cool and calm, with the scent of fresh grass drifting through the wide open space. The sky was a soft blue and sunlight danced gently across the white marble stones that marked the graves of thousands of brave men and women who had served their country. The wind carried a quiet rustle through the trees, as if even nature understood this was a place of deep respect. Crowds slowly gathered near the tomb of the unknown soldier, a sacred monument guarded every hour of every day. People whispered to one another, their voices barely above a breath. There were families, veterans in uniform, and children clutching small flags. Everyone waited patiently for the changing of the guard, one of the most precise and honorable ceremonies in the world. Among the visitors was a little girl named Lily. She was 10 years old, with bright brown eyes that carried both warmth and sadness. Her mother, Sarah, gently pushed her wheelchair through the crowd, finding a good spot near the front. Lily's small hands gripped the arms of her chair as she looked around, excitement glowing in her face. For her, this day meant more than just seeing a famous ceremony. It was a day she had dreamed about for a long time. Lily's father, Captain James Miller, had been a soldier. He had served overseas but never came home. He was one of the many who had given everything for his country. Though Lily was too young to remember all the details, she knew one thing clearly. Her dad was a hero. Every night her mother would tell her stories about how brave he was and how much he loved her. Sarah had promised Lily that one day they would go to Arlington to pay their respects. "You'll get to see where heroes are honored," she had told her, "and you'll see the guards who protect them, just like your daddy once protected others." Now that day had finally come. As they waited, Lily's heart beat faster with both excitement and nervousness. Around them, the atmosphere changed as the ceremony was about to begin. The faint sound of measured footsteps echoed in the distance, sharp, even, and powerful. The crowd fell completely silent. You could almost hear the beating of hearts in the still air. Then he appeared, the tomb guard. Dressed in a perfectly pressed uniform, his face expressionless, his movements exact. Every step he took was perfectly timed. His shoes clicked rhythmically against the marble floor, creating a sound that demanded attention and respect. He carried his rifle with perfect precision, his head held high. Lily watched with wide eyes, unable to look away. "Mom," she whispered softly, "they're so serious. Do they ever smile?" Sarah smiled gently, keeping her voice low. "No, sweetheart. They have a very special duty. They guard the tomb all day and night. It's their way of showing respect to the soldiers who can't be named. The ones who gave everything, just like your dad." Lily nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the soldier. The way he moved fascinated her. It wasn't just walking. It was almost like a dance of discipline and honor. He paused, turned, and marched again, each motion sharp and deliberate. Every click of his heels echoed with meaning. The crowd stood still. No one made a sound, no one dared to move. There was something powerful about the silence and a kind of invisible connection between everyone there. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if paying its own tribute. As the ceremony continued, Lily's eyes drifted to the marble tomb itself. The words carved into it read, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." She read it slowly in her mind, trying to understand what it meant. After a moment, she looked up at her mother and asked in her soft, curious voice, "Mom, do you think Daddy can see them guarding?" Sarah's throat tightened. The question hit her heart like a gentle but deep wave. She knelt down beside Lily, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I think so," she whispered. "I think he can see everything from heaven. And I think he's proud of them, and of you." Lily smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. Her words were quiet, but they carried far enough to reach the ears of the tomb guard marching nearby. His name was Staff Sergeant Michael Daniels, a man known for his flawless discipline. He had served for years in the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, the elite soldiers known as the Old Guard. His job was more than just duty. It was a symbol of honor, of keeping silent watch over those who could no longer speak for themselves. Daniels was trained to ignore distractions. No movement, no noise, no question from the crowd was ever to break his focus. But for some reason, those few words from the little girl seemed to echo differently in his mind. "Do you think Daddy can see them guarding?" He didn't turn his head, didn't change his pace, but inside, something shifted. He had heard many sounds during his service, the chatter of crowds, the crying of children, even the hum of wind during storms, but this was different. That single question reminded him of why he stood there, hour after hour, day after day. His steps continued in perfect rhythm, but his thoughts wandered for a brief second to his own daughter, who was about the same age as the girl in the wheelchair. He thought of how she always waited for him when he came home from duty, running into his arms with a smile that made every sacrifice worth it. When the changing of the guard began, a second soldier stepped forward, matching Daniel's movements with exact timing. The ceremonial inspection was performed with precision. The rifle was checked, the gloves adjusted, and the transition completed without flaw. Every gesture was measured, every second accounted for. Lily watched every move, completely captivated. She didn't understand all the rules, but she could feel how serious and important this was. Her small hands clapped once before she remembered the silence and quickly stopped, embarrassed. A man beside her smiled kindly and whispered, "That's okay, little one. It's beautiful, isn't it?" She nodded, her eyes still wide. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," she whispered. When the ceremony ended, the relief guard took position and Staff Sergeant Daniels prepared to leave. He turned sharply, his boots clicking against the marble. Every movement was perfect, but his mind still carried the echo of the child's question. As he passed the front row, his eyes, trained to stay forward, caught a quick glimpse of the little girl in the wheelchair. Resting on her lap was a small framed photo of a man in uniform holding a baby who looked just like her. For a brief moment, Daniels felt his chest tighten. He recognized the insignia on the man's shoulder. It was the same unit he served in years ago. The realization struck him deeply. That man wasn't just another soldier. He was a brother in arms. The rules told him to keep walking, to never break his composure. But something inside him, something human, whispered differently. He took a deep breath and marched on, but the weight of that moment stayed with him. As he disappeared from view, the crowd began to murmur softly about how moving the ceremony had been. Sarah leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "You did it, sweetheart. You got to see the guards. Daddy would be so proud." Lily smiled weakly, holding the photo close. "I think Daddy liked it too," she said quietly. As they turned to leave, the wind picked up again, brushing through the trees and sending a soft whisper across the stones. It almost sounded like a voice, and gentle, peaceful, and full of pride. And though no one else noticed, Lily looked up at the sky and smiled, feeling as if her father really was there, watching after all, far away behind the marble walls. Staff Sergeant Daniels removed his hat and exhaled slowly. He knew he had done his duty perfectly, yet something told him his service that day had meant more than ever before. The crowd began to move slowly away from the tomb of the unknown soldier, but Lily and her mother stayed for a few moments longer, reluctant to leave the solemn place that held so much meaning. Lily's eyes were fixed on the guards who had just completed their precise, silent routine. Every move they had made, every step, every careful turn seemed to echo in her heart. She could feel the seriousness of the place, the weight of respect that surrounded them. "Mom," Lily whispered softly, "why do they have to be so serious all the time? Why can't they smile or talk to people?" Sarah leaned down and gently brushed Lily's hair from her forehead. "They are serious because their duty is very important, Lily. They guard this tomb to honor soldiers who gave everything for their country. Even if they wanted to smile, they have to show respect. Sometimes respect is shown with silence and stillness, not with words or laughter." Lily nodded slowly, but she still looked a little sad. "I just wish Daddy could have seen them too," she murmured, her fingers lightly brushing the frame of her father's photograph. Nearby, Staff Sergeant Michael Daniels, the tomb guard who had stood with perfect discipline throughout the ceremony, began to walk toward the exit. His movements were exact, his face still calm and serious, but inside his mind was anything but still. He couldn't stop thinking about the little girl's question. "Do you think Daddy can see them guarding?" The words were simple, but they carried a kind of power that Daniels hadn't felt in a long time. He had always followed the rules without question, never stepping out of line, never speaking to visitors, never allowing his personal feelings to show. That was what being a tomb guard meant. But as he passed Lily in her wheelchair, something made him pause. He caught sight of the photograph she held, a man in uniform smiling at the camera, holding a baby in his arms. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. He recognized the insignia on the man's uniform, the same unit he himself had served in years ago. A rush of memories came back to him. The laughter of soldiers around the mess hall, the long nights spent on duty, the friends he had lost in service. And suddenly he realized this child was not just any visitor. She was the daughter of a fallen soldier, someone he had known, someone he had respected deeply. For a moment, Daniel's training battled with his humanity. The rules said to walk away, to maintain distance, to never break protocol, but his heart told him something different. There was a quiet courage in this little girl, the same courage he had seen in so many soldiers he had served with, and he knew she deserved more than just a distant glance. The crowd, now beginning to disperse, noticed the change in his pace. Daniel's had stopped for a fraction of a second longer than anyone expected. Some people glanced over curiously, but no one spoke. They sensed that something important was about to happen, even if they didn't know what. Lily looked up at the soldier as he drew closer, her big brown eyes meeting his for the briefest of moments. She smiled faintly, a mixture of curiosity and shyness. "Hello," she whispered, her voice almost drowned by the rustle of the wind and the faint sounds of the crowd moving away. Daniel's eyes softened ever so slightly. He bent his head just a little, still maintaining his formal posture, but his expression carried something more. A silent recognition, a quiet acknowledgement of the child's bravery in visiting this sacred place. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She had been proud of Lily for making this trip, for facing the solemn ceremony with such respect, but she never expected what was about to happen next. She felt a mix of awe and anxiety, unsure whether Daniels would actually do something he was not allowed to do. For several seconds, Daniels stood silently in front of Lily, studying the photograph she held. The wind blew gently, moving the edges of her small jacket. Lily's hand shook slightly as she held the frame, and her mother instinctively reached out to steady it. The soldier remained still, his rifle carefully held by his side, but his eyes never left the photo. Then, almost imperceptibly, Daniel's lips moved. He spoke softly in a voice that was calm but full of feeling. "Your father was a brave man," he said. "He served with honor. We guard this tomb for him and for every soldier who gave everything." Lily's eyes widened in surprise. She had never heard a guard speak to a visitor, especially during such an important moment. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she couldn't quite describe. The words were simple, but they carried respect, compassion, and understanding. The people around them had stopped in their tracks. Some held their breath, unsure whether what they were witnessing was real. They had heard of the tomb guard's strict rules, that they could never speak, could never show emotion, could never engage with visitors. And yet here was Staff Sergeant Daniels breaking protocol in the most respectful and human way imaginable. Lily's mother, Sarah, felt tears welling up in her eyes. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. All she could do was watch, amazed at the courage it took for this soldier to step outside the rules for the sake of compassion. Lily, on the other hand, felt a mixture of awe and joy. She smiled shyly and held out the photograph of her father. "This is my daddy," she said softly. "He would have loved to see you guarding here." Daniels looked at the photo again, his eyes tracing the uniform, the insignia, the familiar face of someone he had once known. He felt a lump in his throat. Without a word, he brought his right hand to his forehead in a crisp salute, a gesture so precise and meaningful that it spoke louder than any words ever could. The crowd around them instinctively rose to their feet. Veterans in the audience returned the salute, some with tears in their eyes. Others placed their hands over their hearts. Even those who did not fully understand the rules recognized the weight of the moment. This was not just a ceremony, it was a testament to honor, respect, and the bond between soldiers and their families. For several long seconds, the world seemed to pause. The rustling of the leaves, the soft whisper of the wind, and the distant footsteps of departing visitors faded into the background. All that remained was the small girl in the wheelchair, her mother standing beside her, and the soldier who had chosen to act not out of duty alone, but out of humanity. Daniels lowered his hand slowly, maintaining his posture, and spoke again. "He would be proud of you," he said to Lily. The words were quiet, yet they carried a strength that filled the space around them. Lily's eyes glistened with tears. She felt as if her father's presence was right there beside her, smiling, proud, and at peace. The soldier straightened, adjusting his gloves and preparing to return to his position. The crowd, still standing, watched silently. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment where rules met compassion, and the human heart triumphed over protocol. As Daniels walked away, his steps measured and precise once more, Lily whispered to her mother, "Mom, did you see?" "He knew, Daddy." Sarah nodded, holding her daughter close. "Yes, sweetheart, he knew. And he honored him in the most beautiful way." The crowd slowly began to move again, but a quiet buzz of awe lingered in the air. People whispered about what they had seen, about the courage of the soldier and the bravery of the little girl. The story, even in that small moment, began to spread, a reminder that respect and humanity often shine brightest when they break the rules for the right reasons. Lily clutched the photo of her father tightly, feeling a connection she had never felt before. She looked up at the tomb guard as he disappeared from view and whispered, "Thank you." It was not just for him, but for her father, for the soldiers who had given everything, and for the understanding that honor was more than ceremony. It was heart. As they slowly made their way down the path, Sarah could see that this trip had changed Lily in a way words could not fully express. The little girl's eyes were brighter, filled with hope and pride. She had witnessed something rare, something sacred. She had seen a soldier honor her father in a way that went beyond duty, a gesture that spoke of love, respect, and the courage to care. And far away, behind the solemn marble walls of the tomb, Staff Sergeant Daniels returned to his watch with the same calm, disciplined demeanor as always. But inside he carried the quiet knowledge that today, he had done more than guard a tomb. He had honored a life, comforted a child, and reminded the world that even in the strictest traditions, humanity and kindness could always find a way to shine. After the brief, quiet moments at the tomb, the crowd began to slowly disperse, whispering softly among themselves. But Lily and her mother, Sarah, stayed in place, still feeling the lingering weight of what had just happened. Lily's small hands clutched the photograph of her father tightly, as if holding it closer would allow her to feel him even more. She had seen soldiers every year on Memorial Day in parades and ceremonies, but nothing had ever felt as real as the moment she had just witnessed. Her mother knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair behind Lily's ear and holding her hand firmly. "That was a special moment, Lily," Sarah whispered. "You will always remember it, and so will everyone who saw it." Lily nodded slowly, her eyes shining with a mix of wonder and disbelief. "Mom, did you see how he looked at the photo?" "He knew, Daddy," she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly. "He knew your father and he honored him. That is something very rare and very beautiful." The crowd around them, now more aware of the remarkable moment, began to linger, murmuring in admiration. Some veterans whispered to each other, shaking their heads in quiet awe. "I've been here for 20 years, one said softly, "and I've never seen anything like that." That soldier, he stepped beyond the rules, and it was perfect. Other visitors looked on with curiosity, some taking a step closer to get a better view, but maintaining the respectful distance that the solemn place demanded. Everyone sensed that they had just witnessed something extraordinary, a rare blend of duty, honor, and human kindness. Staff Sergeant Michael Daniels, meanwhile, stood a short distance away, adjusting his uniform and preparing to continue his watch. Every movement he made was precise, every step measured. But his mind was alive with the memory of the little girl's face and the photograph she had shown him. He had spent years mastering the discipline of the tomb guard, standing for hours in all weather, moving with exacting precision, never speaking, never showing emotion. But today he had done something different. He had allowed his humanity to guide his actions, and the result was a moment that no rule book could ever capture. As he resumed his formal duties, Daniels noticed the crowd's subtle shift in energy. People were whispering, looking at him with quiet admiration as if sensing the weight of what had just occurred. It was unusual. No one ever dared to admire the guards during their duty. And yet today they were not merely witnessing a ceremony. They were witnessing a gesture of respect and compassion that transcended protocol. Lily, still holding her father's photo, turned to her mother with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Mom, do you think he did the right thing?" she asked, her voice small but earnest. Sarah smiled softly, holding her daughter close. "Yes, Lily, he did the right thing. He showed that honoring someone isn't just about following rules. Sometimes it's about following your heart." The little girl thought about the guard's actions for a long moment. She had always admired soldiers for their bravery and discipline, but seeing someone break protocol in such a respectful way opened a new understanding in her young mind. Honor wasn't just about rules or appearances. It was about recognition, compassion, and standing up for what mattered most even when it was difficult. Across the plaza, other visitors began to reflect on the significance of what had happened. Families discussed it quietly, veterans shared their thoughts with one another, and children pointed to the soldier with curiosity and awe. The moment had left an impression on everyone present, a shared understanding that respect and kindness could coexist, even in the strictest of circumstances. Daniels, meanwhile, finished his segment of duty and began the slow, deliberate march toward the edge of the ceremonial area. Each step echoed with precision, but his mind lingered on the little girl and her father's photograph. The memory of her eyes filled with hope and reverence stayed with him. For all the years he had spent standing at the tomb, this was the first time he had truly felt that his actions had created a bridge between the past and the present, between duty and human connection. As he passed near Lily again, the girl lifted the photograph slightly as if offering it to him. Her voice was soft, almost trembling with emotion. "This was Daddy," she said, her eyes meeting his. "He would have loved to see you guarding." Daniels paused, taking a single step closer. He didn't touch the photograph. That would have been inappropriate. But he brought his hand to his forehead in a precise, heartfelt salute. It was the kind of salute that spoke volumes, a tribute not just to a fallen soldier, but to the bond between soldiers and their families, and to the enduring respect that the tomb guard represented. The crowd, now fully aware of the extraordinary nature of the moment, reacted with quiet reverence. Some veterans returned the salute instinctively. Others placed their hands over their hearts. Even the children in the audience, who might not have understood all the nuances, felt the emotional weight of the gesture. A sense of unity spread through the crowd, an unspoken acknowledgement of honor, courage, and humanity intertwined. Lily's eyes welled with tears. She had never expected to witness something so profound. The soldier, who had seemed untouchable in distant moments before, had now shown her that true honor involved understanding, compassion, and courage. Her father, she imagined, must have been smiling down from above, proud of both the little girl who carried his memory and the soldier who honored him. Sarah, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment, wrapped her arms around Lily. "This is something you will never forget, my love," she whispered. "And it will always remind you that the world is full of people who honor goodness and bravery, even when it's not easy." As the ceremony concluded, Daniel straightened, adjusted his uniform, and prepared to return to the tomb. He had done what no rulebook could require. He had acknowledged the human connection between a soldier and a family, between past sacrifice and present remembrance. Though outwardly composed and disciplined, he felt a quiet satisfaction within, a sense that he had contributed to something far greater than himself. The crowd began to slowly disperse again, but whispers of admiration followed them. People shared their thoughts about what they had witnessed, marveling at the rare courage it took for a soldier to break protocol in such a meaningful and respectful way. Stories would be told and retold, not in official logs or formal reports, but in the hearts and minds of those who had seen the extraordinary gesture. Lily, still clutching her father's photograph, turned to her mother with a gentle smile. "Mom, do you think Daddy saw what happened?" she asked. "I know he did," Sarah replied softly. "He was with us in that moment, and he would have been proud of you, and of the soldier who honored him." The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a warm glow across the cemetery. The shadows of the trees stretched long over the white marble stones, creating a quiet, reflective atmosphere. Lily looked around at the rows of graves, feeling a sense of connection to all the soldiers who had given everything. She realized that honoring them was not just about ceremonies or words. It was about remembering, respecting, and carrying their stories forward. As the two of them wheeled away from the tomb, Lily glanced back one last time. Her heart was full, her mind filled with images of bravery, discipline, and compassion intertwined. She had witnessed something rare, something beautiful, a soldier who knew when to follow his heart, and a child who reminded everyone around her of the power of love and memory. Far away, Staff Sergeant Daniels resumed his watch, every movement precise, every step measured. But inside he carried a quiet warmth, a feeling that went beyond duty. For all the discipline and rules, he knew that the true measure of honor was not only in perfection, but in moments like these, moments where humanity met tradition, and respect became something living, tangible, and unforgettable. The day ended quietly, with the gentle rustle of leaves and the soft whisper of the wind over the marble stones. Yet the memory of that morning, of the little girl in the wheelchair, the photograph of her father, and the soldier who stepped beyond the rules, lingered in the hearts of all who had witnessed it. It was a story that would be told quietly, reverently, and repeatedly, a story of courage, compassion, and the extraordinary power of small acts of humanity. The plaza around the tomb of the unknown soldier had grown quieter as the crowd lingered, hesitant to leave after witnessing the extraordinary moment between Lily and the tomb guard. People moved slowly, as if unsure whether to break the spell of what had just occurred. Even the wind seemed to whisper softly, rustling leaves as if paying tribute to the memory of the soldiers who had given their lives. Lily remained in her wheelchair, holding the photograph of her father tightly against her chest. Her eyes followed the soldier, Staff Sergeant Michael Daniels, who had just saluted her father's image with such precision and respect. The gesture, though brief, had left a profound mark on her young mind. She felt a warmth in her heart, a quiet connection to her father that she had never experienced before. "Mom," Lily whispered, her voice almost trembling. He really cared about Daddy, didn't he?" Sarah nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, he cared. He showed it in the most respectful way possible." For a moment they were both silent, taking in the significance of what had happened. Then slowly Staff Sergeant Daniels turned toward them again. The movement was subtle but deliberate. Those around noticed a shift. Something unusual was about to occur. Guards at the tomb were trained to remain distant, emotionless, and untouchable. But Daniel's actions that day were quietly breaking tradition, yet doing so in a way that felt profoundly right. He approached Lily once more, his steps measured, his face composed, yet carrying a hint of emotion that no one had seen before. The crowd instinctively fell silent again, sensing the importance of the moment. Veterans standing nearby straightened, some putting their hands over their hearts, others blinking back tears, realizing that they were witnessing something truly extraordinary. Daniels knelt slightly, careful not to make sudden movements that might seem unprofessional, but lowering himself enough to meet Lily's gaze. His voice, steady yet full of warmth, reached her ears. "Your father was an extraordinary man," he said softly. "He gave everything for this country, and you, young lady, honor him simply by being here today." Lily's eyes widened. She had never expected a soldier to speak directly to her, let alone acknowledge her father in such a meaningful way. Her small voice wavered as she replied, I just wanted to see him remembered." Daniels nodded, understanding more than she could ever express in words. He looked at the photograph she held, then back at her face, his expression softening. "He is remembered," he said firmly. "Every soldier who stands here, every person who walks these grounds, every ceremony you witness, they all honor him. And today I wanted you to know that his service and your presence matter to all of us." The crowd watched, astonished. No one had ever witnessed such a personal moment during the changing of the guard. People whispered among themselves, realizing how rare it was for a tomb guard to break protocol so openly. Even other guards, standing silently in their positions, seemed to recognize the depth of what was happening without a single word spoken. Then, in a gesture that would leave the crowd in awe, Daniels reached toward Lily's wheelchair, placing a gloved hand gently on her shoulder. It was a careful, respectful touch, meant to reassure, to comfort, and to connect. Lily looked up at him, her eyes shining with gratitude and amazement. "You are brave, Lily," Daniel said softly, "and your father would be proud. He would be proud of the way you honor him and all the soldiers who have given so much." Tears began to roll down Sarah's cheeks. She had always known her daughter was brave, but seeing a man she respected so deeply, a soldier who lived by strict rules and discipline, acknowledge that bravery so openly was overwhelming. Sarah whispered a soft thank you to Daniels, her voice trembling with emotion. Lily, too, felt the weight of the moment. She lifted her small hand, holding the photograph up as if offering it to the soldier. "This is Daddy," she said quietly. "He would have loved to meet you." Daniel's eyes softened further, a rare warmth breaking through his stoic exterior. He did not take the photograph, nor did he speak more than necessary. But he gave Lily the most meaningful gesture of respect possible, a formal salute. Every muscle in his body was tense, every motion deliberate, yet the salute carried a depth of emotion that transcended the rules he had been trained to follow. The crowd gasped softly. Even the most seasoned veterans who had spent years watching the ceremonies unfold with perfect precision were visibly moved. Some instinctively rose to their feet, returning the salute in honor of both the fallen soldier and the guard who had honored him so respectfully. Others placed their hands over their hearts, unable to look away from the rare and beautiful display of courage, discipline, and compassion. Lily's eyes filled with tears as the reality of the moment sank in. She had not only witnessed a soldier honoring her father, but she had felt the humanity behind it. The solemnity, the discipline, the precision, all of it combined with a quiet act of kindness and recognition that made her heart swell. For a brief moment, she felt as if her father were standing beside her, smiling, proud, and at peace. Daniels lowered his hand slowly, his face returning to the calm, disciplined mask expected of a tomb guard. But the moment had left a permanent impression on Lily, her mother, the crowd, and even the other guards who had observed it quietly. It was a reminder that even in the strictest traditions there is room for humanity, empathy, and the courage to act in ways that transcend protocol. As the crowd began to settle, Sarah leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "This is a memory you will carry forever, Lily," she whispered. "And it will remind you that courage and honor come in many forms, sometimes even from the people who follow the rules so strictly, they rarely break them." Lily nodded, wiping her tears and smiling faintly. "I feel like Daddy was here with us today," she said softly. "I think he was," Sarah replied, holding her daughter close. "And he would be so proud of you." The wind blew gently through the plaza, carrying the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of distant footsteps. The sun reflected off the marble stones, creating a warm, peaceful glow that seemed to bless the moment even further. Everyone in the plaza, veterans, families, children, tourists, seemed to feel it, a quiet connection that went beyond words. Daniels, meanwhile, straightened his uniform and prepared to return to the tomb. His movements were precise and disciplined, as expected of a soldier guarding one of the most sacred sites in the country. Yet inside he carried the knowledge that he had done something extraordinary. He had honored a fallen soldier in a deeply personal way, comforted a grieving child, and reminded the world that even the most disciplined traditions can be enhanced by acts of kindness and humanity. The little girl, still clutching her father's photograph, watched him walk away. She felt a quiet strength in her heart, a newfound understanding of honor, respect, and courage. The soldier had shown her that it was possible to combine duty with compassion, and that sometimes breaking a rule for the right reason is a true act of bravery. The crowd began to move again, slowly dispersing across the cemetery grounds. People whispered about the moment, sharing what they had seen, marveling at the rare courage it took for Daniels to step beyond protocol. Stories began to form in their minds, stories of a soldier who chose humanity, a child who represented hope, and a father who was remembered in the most meaningful way possible. As they wheeled away, Lily looked back one final time, holding the photograph close to her heart. Her eyes were bright, her mind full of wonder, and her spirit lifted. She felt connected not just to her father, but to the soldier who had honored him, and to the countless others who had served with bravery and sacrifice. Sarah smiled softly, watching her daughter's face. "That was a once-in-a-lifetime moment, Lily," she said, "and it will stay with us forever." The sun continued to shine gently on the marble stones, casting long shadows and a golden glow across the grounds. Somewhere in the quiet of the cemetery, the spirit of her father seemed to smile, proud of his daughter and grateful for the soldier who had shown her the deepest meaning of honor and respect. Staff Sergeant Daniels resumed his solemn watch at the tomb. Every movement was measured, every step precise, yet the memory of the little girl's eyes, the photograph, and the act of honoring a fallen soldier lingered within him. For all the discipline, all the rules, and all the ceremony, this day had reminded him, and everyone who witnessed it, that true honor lies in both duty and compassion, in the courage to act with humanity, even when tradition demands otherwise. The quiet rustle of leaves, the distant murmur of visitors, and the soft warmth of the sun marked the end of a remarkable morning. A morning that would be remembered by all who had been there, and especially by a little girl in a wheelchair who had seen her father honored in a way she would never forget. The day at Arlington National Cemetery slowly came to an end, and the crowd began to disperse, each person carrying the memory of the extraordinary moment they had witnessed. Families walked quietly among the graves, veterans lingered near the tomb, and children whispered softly to their parents about the soldier who had broken protocol to honor a young girl's father. The stories of what had happened spread quietly, like ripples across a calm lake, touching everyone who had been present in the plaza that morning. Lily remained in her wheelchair, her small hands wrapped tightly around the photograph of her father. She felt a deep sense of connection to him that she had never felt before. The soldier's salute, his kind words, and the gentle hand on her shoulder had left an imprint on her heart. It was more than just a ceremony. It was a lesson in respect, courage, and compassion. "Mom," Lily said softly, her voice full of wonder, "I feel like Daddy really saw what happened today. I think he knew we were here." Sarah smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "I know he did, Lily, and I think he would be very proud of the person you are growing up to be. You've already shown so much courage and love." The two of them wheeled slowly along the paths of the cemetery, taking in the rows of white marble markers that stretched as far as the eye could see. Each stone represented a story, a life given in service to something greater than themselves. Lily's eyes wandered over the names and the dates, and she began to understand, even as a 10-year-old, the weight of sacrifice and the value of remembrance. Staff Sergeant Michael Daniels had returned to his position at the tomb. His movements were once again precise, his posture flawless and his expression stoic. On the surface, everything was as it should be, disciplined, controlled, perfect. Yet inside he carried the memory of the little girl's eyes, the photograph of her father, and the unspoken connection that had formed in those quiet moments. The act he had performed, the gentle salute, the few words of recognition, the brief touch on her shoulder, was something he knew he could never publicly acknowledge. It was not recorded in any log, no report would capture it, and there would be no official acknowledgement of the way he had momentarily stepped outside the strict rules of the guard. But Daniels did not need recognition. He had done what was right, and that knowledge was enough. As the months passed, the story of that morning began to travel beyond the cemetery grounds. It started quietly, shared in whispers among veterans and families who had been present. "Did you see what he did for that little girl?" one would ask. "I've never seen a guard do that," another would reply. The story spread slowly, a quiet legend of compassion, courage, and respect. Lily, for her part, carried the memory with her everywhere she went. She would often sit with her photograph of her father, remembering the soldier who had honored him so respectfully. She shared the story with her friends and family, speaking not just of the ceremony, but of the lesson she had learned, that true courage and honor were not only about following rules, but about knowing when to act with humanity and kindness. Years passed and Lily grew older. The wheelchair that had carried her during her first visit to Arlington became a memory of her childhood, replaced by braces and determination as she learned to walk with strength and courage. But the memory of that morning, the soldier, the salute, the respect, remained vivid in her heart. It became a part of who she was, a guiding lesson that influenced how she treated others, how she understood bravery, and how she carried her father's legacy forward. When Lily returned to Arlington as a teenager, the plaza was quieter, the crowds less dense, but the weight of the tomb and its history remained the same. She wheeled herself along the paths she had once traveled, her eyes scanning the familiar white marble stones. She paused in front of the tomb of the unknown soldier, holding a small bouquet of flowers in her hands. With gentle care, she placed them at the base of the monument, whispering softly, "Thank you, Daddy. And thank you to the soldier who honored you that day." Though decades of ceremonies had passed, the memory of Staff Sergeant Daniels' gesture remained alive, both in Lily's heart and in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. For the veterans who had been present, it became a reminder that service is not just about precision, rules, or outward discipline. It is about respect, compassion, and understanding the human connection that binds us all. Lily's mother watched her daughter with pride, remembering the 10-year-old who had first visited the tomb and the moment that had changed both their lives. "You've carried this memory so well, Lily," Sarah said softly. "It has become part of who you are and part of how you honor your father." Lily nodded, tears welling in her eyes once more. "I will never forget it, Mom. I will always remember what it meant. And I will carry it forward." And carry it forward she did. Lily began to volunteer at veterans' events, sharing her story and helping others understand the importance of honoring those who have served. She spoke to children about bravery, compassion, and the power of small acts of kindness. Every time she shared the story of the soldier who had broken protocol to honor her father, she reminded her listeners that true courage is not only in following rules, but in knowing when to act with humanity. As for Staff Sergeant Daniels, he continued his duty faithfully year after year, guarding the tomb with the same discipline and respect as always. Yet quietly he carried the memory of that little girl and her father with him. He never spoke of it publicly, never sought recognition, but the act remained a part of his heart, a reminder that service is most meaningful when it touches lives in ways that rules cannot always capture. The story of that day continued to inspire those who learned of it, spreading quietly through Arlington and beyond. Veterans shared it during reunions, families told it during Memorial Day gatherings, and children who visited the tomb learned about the soldier and the little girl who reminded everyone of the true meaning of honor. It became a story not of rules broken, but of courage, respect, and the human heart triumphing in the most unexpected of ways. Years later, when Lily herself had children, she took them to Arlington. She showed them the tomb, told them about the guards, and shared the story of the soldier who had saluted her father's photograph. She explained that while rules are important, the heart sometimes knows what is right even when rules say otherwise. And as her children listened, wide-eyed and full of wonder, she realized that the lesson had come full circle. Honor, courage, and compassion are the true legacy of those who serve. Standing at the tomb once more, Lily placed flowers carefully at the base, remembering both her father and the soldier who had honored him in such a meaningful way. She felt a quiet connection to all those who had served, all those who had sacrificed, and all those who had chosen to act with kindness when it mattered most. The sun cast a golden light over the white marble stones, highlighting the solemn beauty of the cemetery. The wind carried the soft rustle of leaves as if whispering a blessing across the grounds. In that moment, Lily felt a sense of peace, pride, and hope, a feeling that would remain with her forever. Staff Sergeant Daniels, still guarding the tomb, moved with the same precision and discipline as always. But deep inside, he carried the knowledge that he had touched a life in a way no one else could. His brief act of recognition, courage, and respect had created ripples that would continue to spread for years to come. It was a quiet, lasting legacy, proof that even the smallest gestures, when guided by the heart, can leave the deepest impressions. And so, the story of that day lived on. It was shared in whispers, in letters, in memories, and in quiet conversations at Arlington. It became a story not just about a soldier or a girl or a father, but about humanity, honor, and the courage to act with compassion, for Lily, for her family, and for all who had witnessed it. The story became a reminder that true honor is measured not only by duty, but by the kindness, respect, and love that we show to others, especially when they need it most. Lily carried that lesson into her life, shaping who she became, the choices she made, and the way she treated others. She never forgot the soldier who had broken protocol for her and her father. And she knew, without a doubt, that his act of courage and kindness had changed not only her life, but the lives of everyone who had witnessed it. Even years later, when Lily returned to Arlington with her own children, the memory of that day remained alive. She could still see the soldier's precise salute, the gentle placement of his hand on her shoulder, and the respect in his eyes for her father. It was a memory that transcended time, a story of honor and humanity that would never fade, reminding all who heard it that sometimes the most powerful acts of courage are the ones guided by the heart. And in that quiet, sacred place, where thousands of soldiers had been laid to rest, a little girl's question, a soldier's courage, and a father's memory came together to create a legacy that would inspire generations. A true reminder that honor is not just a rule to follow, but a life to live.